Hello, I'm Elif Batuman, and I wrote a book called The Possessed, Adventures with Russian Books and the People Who Read Them.
Hi, I'm Ben Greenman, and I'm the author of this book, Celebrity Chekhov, which is an adaptation of the stories of Anton Chekhov using contemporary celebrities. Well, the thing about backlash that's odd is that I think both of us, in a way, you said we preempted it. I think we've sort of built that idea of backlash into the book. In the case of my book, I'm taking these stories and putting celebrities in for classical Russian characters, although I don't know that the people know these characters that well. They know the stories in some cases. So there's been backlash from both sides. There's been backlash from people who think that the book is piggybacking on celebrities, backlash from people who think it's disemboweling Chekhov, and backlash from people who think it's doing neither, but that somehow I opportunistically, I'm trying to think of the kinds of things. Oh, the best thing is the people who think I didn't do work. That's my favorite one. So a couple of people have said, I don't understand this. This guy just replaced a couple words in each story and got a big book deal for just replacing a few words. So there's a lot of misunderstandings in that sentence that person thought all along the way. I mean, it started as a joke. The weird thing is it's sort of a serious book to me in some ways. When I started it, I had done 3 books in 4 years and was tired of and was told to stop doing books by the publisher who thought, let's take a little break. And I had this idea, and the idea became a book, and it started as a sort of high concept thing that people don't read literature the way they used to. And yet every single person, when you go to a reading and you say, is anybody here following what's happening with Kim Kardashian posing nude? Everybody raises their hand, every single person. So 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I thought it would be funny to take these stories, which I had read forever in these stagey 19th century translations, and put contemporary celebrities into them. I told Harper, they thought, this is great, this is a book. To me, it's sort of an experiment. But it's fairly serious. It's funny, obviously, because it's strange. But it's serious in the sense that it's about how people read these stories and what they mean to them. And at the same time, how people deal with these celebrities, who are seen as these figures with no inner life. There's a story, a lady story, about this middle-aged woman who's looking back on her youth and the beauty and this love affair she had. And I gave it to Britney Spears. And when I read that, people laugh at the idea that she has any thoughts. They're not laughing at the story, because the story is very sad. They're laughing at the idea that she has regret and thought that the better part of her life was behind her, which is kind of shocking to think that another human being gets laughed at for having interiority. So the short answer is, yes, it's funny. I hope people see it as funny, but I sort of intended it to be a stealth, serious book underneath that. And how about you? Funny?
I thought your book was really funny, and in surprising ways. One thing that I thought was super funny is where Chekhov will use the name in the patronymic, and it's like, Natalia Filipovna, you'll use the first name and last name, so they'll be like, yes, Nicole Kidman, I think that it is going to rain today. And
I tried to change it to a lot of women for that, because it's very strange. It's a strange formality. But
I mean, all the things that I really love about literature are really tied to the ability to be comic and to make people laugh. I thought of one of the models for the book that I had was Don Quixote about. So the idea that I had was that the question is how do you make your life. It's a little similar. How do you make your life resemble your favorite books or resemble great literature? Mm-hmm. How do you bring your lived experience closer to the books that you think of as great and that mean something to you? And the way that people usually do it, both writers of novels themselves and the characters in novels, is usually through imitation. So what I write in the introduction is what if you read Lost Illusions and instead of moving to New York and living in a garret and writing book reviews and self-publishing your poetry and sleeping around so that you can eventually write the Lost Illusions of 21st century New York, what if instead you learn French and go to Balzac's house and meet all of Balzac's relatives and then you start writing. And that is a kind of, there's something literal-minded about it, which I find funny. But I also find it touching and human and real in a way that, because I guess the problem that I have with some of the fiction that's getting written now, I feel like it's something that's happening in a vacuum. Like if you just try to rewrite a book like Lost Illusions, you're kind of not taking advantage of the fact that Lost Illusions already exists and that there's all this, knowledge around it, and that's something that you could be using. And instead, you're sitting trying to reinvent the wheel, trying to do all the same things. But if you acknowledge that it exists and that it's an object in the world with all these like real people and real things attached to it, and then you go and like run after them, like chasing them and pursuing them, it's both funnier and it's more humane and more collaborative.
Did you get angry calls from Babel's daughter and whoever else?
I did get an email from Babel's grandson. Yeah, he was. It was an interesting email. He was not happy with how I presented his mother. He said that I made her look stupid and that I had misunderstood something that she said, and basically that was it. And he was like, "Don't get me wrong. It made a really funny story. It made a great punchline. It was hilarious, but at what cost?" Which I thought was interesting because most of the other backlash that I got from kind of some of the older and more humorless members of the university establishment, especially people who were born in the Soviet Union, who there's all these cultural differences too. None of them were, treated the book as something that was funny. So it was interesting to me that
he at least knew it was.
He knew it was supposed to be funny, and I don't know, of course maybe he was being sarcastic and being like, yeah, it was really funny, but the feeling that I got was that he was conceding that it was funny and just saying that, this is not cool what you did with my mom. I got into Russian literature mostly through my exasperation with fun and leisure. As a child and as a teenager, I didn't enjoy recreation very much. And so I read in the book that the first Russian book that I had a very intense experience with was Anna Karenina, which I read over the summer. I was visiting my grandmother in Ankara, and I ran out of English books. And I used to, at the time, I was in high school, I read some serious books, but I also read a lot of the books that were just designed for high school students to read, which, And so this was the longest and most serious book that I'd gotten, and usually I would feel kind of put off by such big books, but this time I just remember feeling this deep relief, like thank God it's so long, like it's gonna keep me busy for a really long time. And also I remember having for the first time this thought that think how long it must have taken for Tolstoy to write it, and this is time that he wasn't ashamed to spend writing a book rather than by enjoying himself at a barbecue or playing frisbee, and that he wasn't oppressed as I was oppressed by this tyranny of leisure, which is something that I started to become conscious of around that time, and that the leisure activities in Anna Karenina were beautiful and dignified and meaningful in terms of plot. They all advanced the story. There wasn't just, people weren't just trying to like kill time. And so I think a lot of that actually came from the fact that I grew up during the Cold War, and there was this idea that, so I grew up in the United States. My family's from Turkey, so I think we had an idea of what the United States stood for and what it meant, maybe more than if we had, been several generations in this country. And so I thought a lot about what it is to be American and what's America. And it's like this huge, powerful, monolithic thing compared to Turkey. And the only other power in the world that's as powerful and as big is the Soviet Union, and they're both these abbreviations that start with a U, and they're both really huge, but everything that's good here is bad there, and everything that's bad here is good there. It's like the other side of the looking glass, and the alphabet is a little different. You don't know what's happening there. No one goes in, no one comes out. When they come out, you don't know what they're saying. And then who do you actually see from Russia? You saw Olympic athletes, chess champions. I thought these people are badasses. They're really serious. They're trying to further human achievement. They aren't, no one's making them sell Girl Scout cookies, which that was my ignorance. Probably they were all young pioneers, but they weren't selling cookies. They were doing other stuff. Probably a lot of it was really horrible stuff. But anyway, so that's the kind of romantic idea I had of Russia and its seriousness. And then when I got to college, I decided the thing I really wanted to study was the novel, and kind of the glory time of the novel is the 19th century. And the three big novel traditions of the 19th century are England, France, and Russia. And so, I explored a little bit, as one does at that age, and I felt like the English novels, Dickens mostly, they were kind of childlike. They were about children. They had parts that were incredibly funny, but they were in a kind of a slapstick way and a little bit over the top. And the French novels I thought were just really cold and cynical and not funny at all. And the British ones were funny, but when they were sad, they were just kind of like maudlin and, you know, poor orphans getting run over by transoms or whatever. And the French ones were only sad, but in this like chilling, everyone's going to stab everyone in the back and everyone's just trying to step on everyone else to sleep with the next person, which I found very depressing. Whereas in the Russian books, there's this, the sadness is there's this melancholy and boredom, and there's just the tedium of life, and it's meaninglessness, and but combined with a quest to find out what it means, you know, melancholy without complete disillusionment, but also without illusions. At the same time, they're insanely funny. Like, that's the only literature where fish come out of the water and people are like, you know, months later they're like trying to figure out what that fish said. Russian literature presented itself to me as something that was really funny and really sad and really serious all at the same time, and that's my idea of an ideal literature.
For me, it's strange because I always think I'm winding down. I mean, this is really, like, most of the books come out of projects that I think I'm going to set aside for a while, and that just doesn't end up happening. This book, like I said, Celebrity Chekhov, came out of something that I was trying to do in between books to sort of get my mind off of it. I always try to write humor pieces in between because it gets rid of a lot of the anger. Much of it is motivated by anger, and the way you can unload that is just by, like I did this piece for McSweeney's this week called Shit Berlusconi Says, which is just like a fake sitcom script, as if it were shit my dad says, but it's Berlusconi because he's going around maligning women and Jews and black people and everyone else. I hope to God that doesn't turn into anything longer, because to me that's a 400-word piece that's done. And someone wrote me from Italy today to say, this is great, I'm putting it on my Facebook and Berlusconi's going to sue you. Fine, whatever, bring it on. But I hope that doesn't grow. The problem is that they sometimes do, because I think all the works, and somebody might disagree, but I think all of the 7 books that I've done are the same. I think it's all the same issues. It's all issues of sort of creative paternity in public and private life. Those are the 2 big themes. Like, I write a lot about fathers, and people think I have an issue with my father, which I don't. I have a problem with the writers who I think of as creative fathers. And then always public and private life. How you can be, you know, the normal, totally well-adjusted person in here.
Well, I like how you gestured toward me.
I am. That's exactly what I'm doing. But then you read the book and you see, and this is
like, wow,
part of the fun of it.
Total fuck up, yeah.
Right. Like, why? Like, what is she worried about? She's totally presentable and normal and articulate. Like, why is there a sense when I'm reading this essay that she's worried about that, or an overt statement, like she has to escape a room and go and stand somewhere else because there's a concern that these things aren't in play. And so, to me, you know, whatever. That's one of the themes. So I think what I'm working on next is there's a bunch of novels that are, you know, 2/3 done. Which one will become 3/3 done? Hard to say.
My book came out in February, and since then I've been running around doing a lot of promotion stuff, and I went to Australia. And so I feel like it's interesting because this is kind of the first year that I've, you know, like I've seen my name in print with like writer near it, but it's the least writing I've done. Literally, I think since I was 7, because I've, you know, scribbled a lot. It's interesting, but so I did that Kafka story, which I was really happy about being able to do, and I'm trying to get back in the swing. I have a very overdue piece on Dante for Harper's Magazine. So after I do the Dante thing for Harper's, I'm going to go to Istanbul. I'm actually leaving in 6 days. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be a writer in residence at Koç University, and I'm going to be doing some writing from there for the New Yorker.